After watching episode 104 of The Arena on Hamza's Den, I found myself less interested in the actual debate than in a question that emerged from it. The discussion revolved around two topics. The first was Hamza's argument from DNA. He argued that DNA contains information, that information of this kind is normally associated with intelligence, and therefore intelligence is the best explanation for the existence of life. The second topic was predestination and free will. The atheist scholar argued that if God knows everything in advance, then human beings cannot be genuinely free. As I listened, I found myself unconvinced by both sides. The atheist struggled to explain exactly why God's foreknowledge creates a contradiction. At several points, the discussion seemed to go in circles. But I also wasn't persuaded by Hamza's DNA argument. When people talk about information in DNA, I think there's a tendency to move very quickly from biological information to human language or computer code. The fact that DNA contains information does not automatically mean it was written in the same way a book is written or a computer program is programmed. Now, maybe there are stronger versions of the argument. Maybe there are things I haven't considered, but I don't think the case is nearly as straightforward as Hamza presents it. However, while listening to the debate, I realized something interesting. Suppose Hamza is right. Suppose DNA really does point to intelligence. Suppose life was really designed. What follows from that? Would that get us to Islam? Would that get us to Allah? Would that get us to Muhammad? Would that even get us to a God who is actively involved in the world today? I don't think so, because design and guidance are not the same thing. Imagine I walk through a forest and find a watch on the ground. I would immediately infer a watchmaker. But the watchmaker could be dead. The watchmaker could be absent. The watchmaker could have made the watch centuries ago and never interacted with it again. The existence of design does not tell me whether the designer is still involved. And that brings me to the question that actually interests me. Does the world look guided? When I look at reality, it doesn't. If a bridge collapses, everyone on it is affected according to the laws of physics. The bridge doesn't spare the innocent child. The bridge doesn't target the murderer. It simply collapses. If a disease spreads through a population, it follows biology. It doesn't seem to care whether the victim is a saint or a criminal. Natural disasters follow geology. Storms follow meteorology. Economic success often follows incentives, institutions, geography, and luck. The world appears to run according to impersonal processes. Now, I want to be careful here. I'm not saying this proves there's no God. I'm not claiming certainty. I'm simply describing what the world looks like. And what it looks like is a system operating according to regular laws. Many believers will respond by saying that God works through those laws. Fair enough. But then I have to ask another question. If God is actively guiding the world, where is that guidance visible? Why do sincere seekers end up in radically different religions? Why are miracles always in the distant past? Why are revelations confined to ancient texts? Why does reality look so ordinary? Again, I'm not asking for magic tricks. I'm not asking for the moon to be split every Tuesday. But if there is an all-powerful God who wants a relationship with humanity, why is his presence so difficult to distinguish from absence? One thing that has always struck me is how indiscriminate suffering appears to be. A bridge collapses and kills whoever happens to be there. A tsunami strikes whoever happens to be on the coastline. Cancer affects believers and unbelievers alike. Depression affects believers and unbelievers alike. The world does not appear to be arranged around moral deserts. It appears to be arranged around natural laws. And perhaps there's a reason for that. Perhaps God values hiddenness. Perhaps faith requires uncertainty. Perhaps there is some greater purpose that I don't understand. I can't rule those possibilities out. But when I ask myself what the world actually looks like, my answer remains the same. It looks unguided, or at least it looks far less guided than I would expect if an all-powerful, benevolent deity was actively governing human affairs. That is why, despite all the discussion about predestination and free will in this debate, I came away thinking about something else entirely. Even if I granted Hamza's argument, even if I granted that life points to intelligence, even if I granted a creator, my deeper question would remain. Where is that creator now? Not where he is physically, not what his nature is, not whether he can know the future, but where is his guidance? Where is his intervention? Where is the evidence that the world is being actively governed by a conscious moral agent? For me, that is the most interesting question. For me, that's the more interesting question. And it is the question I continue to wrestle with. Not whether life was designed, but whether the world looks guided.